Okay, so hopefully last section here. One can only hope. But now we got factoring by grouping, which we kind of already discussed. So with factoring by grouping, you take the first two terms and you take the last two terms and you group them together. So when we're doing this, we have to take out what's in common, which we kind of already hit on this when we started with trial and error before. But they both have a 2 in common, so I'm going to divide a 2 out. And they both have a c in common, so I'm going to take out a c as well. So put the 2 outside, they each have a c, so I'm going to take a c out. And all that's left, 4 divided by 2, I still have a 2 left here. I still have an a left, right? I have a 1 and a b, so it is a 1b, so positive 1b. Over here, I have a negative sign that I could take out of both of them, so I'm going to divide by a negative and pull that out. And then I have a d that I can take out of each of those. So I'm going to take a d out of each of those. So when I take a negative out, I have a 2 left over, still right in here, and I have an a. Over here, I took out a negative, so now I have a positive b. And the reason why I took that negative out is now those two in parentheses are the same. And remember, when you factor by grouping, these two items need to be the same. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. So I take the first item in each and I put them together. So 2c minus 1d. And I take this right here and drop them together. And there is your answer for factoring by grouping. Grouping these together, sometimes you can group items a little differently. And by that I mean you don't have to just put them in pairs. So I know you're sitting there saying, well, let's just group these first two together. You can, but then when you try to group the last two, when you factor by grouping, they don't go together. You need to make the terms look the same. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to rewrite this by moving that negative 16y squared out here and this 10x plus 25 over here to get this. And this is how I'm going to group this together. I'm grouping all of this together. And you might sit there and ask yourself, why? Why are you grouping all that together? Because this is factorable. Can you think of two numbers that multiply together to give you 25, that add to give you 10? Well, I can. 5 and 5, which means you get x plus 5 and x plus 5. Right? So you get x plus 5 and x plus 5. And you still have that minus 16y squared. Well, you're probably sitting there saying, why, oh why, would you waste your time doing that? Well, very simple. If I have these two right here, I can rewrite this as x plus 5 squared, and I have a negative 16y squared. Now, can you think of why I did this? The reason I did this is because it's a difference of squares. This is squared already, and this is squared, except I need to do something with that 16. I can rewrite that 16 as 4 squared. So I can group that together, and when I group it together, continuing on here where we last left off, when I group that together, I end up now having a 4y squared. So this is my first term minus my second term, right? My first term minus my second term. So there's my first terms. Here's my second term, and then plus my, this is minus the first term and plus, or sorry, we have the first term minus the second term, and the first term plus the second term. And there is the factors. So more factoring by grouping here. I'm just going to group the first two and then group the last two. There is no numbers in common, but I can take two x's out of each of them, right? So I'm going to take two x's out, which means there's one left over there. So I have an x squared on the outside and a 3, 1x, so 3x plus 2 left over. Over here, I can take a negative 4 out of both of those, right? So I'm going to take a negative 4 out. So when I do that, I divide by a negative 4. So I pull that on the outside. There is no variable to take out, so I'm left with a 3x plus 2. I know I factored by groupings correctly, because if you notice, these two are the same. That tells me I factored by groupings correctly. So I take the first term, which is an x squared, and the second term, which is a negative 4, and I push them together to get x squared minus 4, and I drop down the 3x plus 2. I'm almost done, except, look right here. This is a difference of squares, isn't it? Right? Because this is squared, this is a subtraction sign, and can I rewrite 4 as something squared? I can. I can rewrite that as 2 squared. So when I do difference of squares, it is the first term minus the second term. Right? The first term minus the second term. And it's the first term plus the second term. And then I bring down the 3x plus 2, and there is all of that factored completely. So there is your homework. Took us 7 different groupings of time to get through it. Each one roughly in between 6 to 10 minutes. So yes, this was an incredibly long lesson, but there's a lot of factoring to go over, as you already know, that you should have known from Algebra 2, thus a prereq section. So hopefully you were able to remember most of this stuff, and if not, I'm very sorry. But if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me, and if not, I will talk with you later.